So I'm going to share my screen with you so I can share with you a Google slide presentation that we've put together with the very famous Mac Gimsey on the first page.
Oh, no. Oh, wow. Oh.
We have Mac with us today, and I'm going to toot his horn for a second because he's going to do something special at the very end, as he is for the next 2 weeks as well. This is actually a 4-week class that we started last week with a very local focus last week on the Community Action Center and what they're doing in Northfield to help those in need right now. If you haven't yet gotten involved or become aware of their program called Operation Joy, this Tuesday, December 1st, is the last day that you can buy gift cards that will be given out, disseminated out on Wednesday with a drive-through for their special Operation Joy program. So if you'd like to get involved, do it right away. Contact them by getting onto their website and getting involved with Christmas sharing for families in Northfield that are in need. So we are hosting this, Amy Narveson and I. We are Bethel Lutheran Church members in Northfield. I know we have some guests from outside of Northfield, so I want to make sure we're speaking in terms of not just our church, but we will be referencing some of the things that have been going on there during the last 12 years. I wanted to show you this picture of Mac because he is officially our Northfield Living Treasure. He really is. He actually was awarded that title this year by Northfield, the city of Northfield. So we're so delighted he's a Bethel member and that he's going to be sharing and something with us at the very end. So
I better be good, huh?
That will keep you with us. That will keep everyone with us for what might end up being
You're so nice.
an entire hour. Oh, and this is what I was afraid of. So I am screen sharing and my screen doesn't want to go to the next slide, and I have a lot of slides, so I'm a little bit worried now. So hold on, bear with me, people. Let's see if I can try that again. Okay, there we go. So these are the classes. These are the 3 classes that we're offering. And so we're right now in our class called Plugging In about alternative giving and our fair this year for 2020. So this is information that you can find on the Bethel website. If you're interested in finding out more about the next 2 classes, we're super excited to welcome Dan Ruth from Lutheran Partners in Global Ministry, which is the organization that my parents, Gordy and Betty Olson, started, who are also here with us today. And the week after that, December 13th, we will have Paige Nagel with us from New York City talking about Charity Water and talking about what they're doing to bring safe water to the planet. So we're super excited to invite these guests to join us the next 2 weeks. We also have a special guest today named Catherine Lozada, who I'm very excited to have share with us at the end of our presentation about Isaiah, Minnesota. So I'll hand it off to Amy.
All right. Well, there's a Chinese saying, if you want happiness for a lifetime, help somebody. And that's what we're here today to talk about, ways that you can help through alternative giving. And in Romans 12, verses 5 through 8, it says, in Christ, we who are many form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. If it is contributing to the needs of others, let him give generously. And that's just saying that we are all one and we are all connected. And it's easy for me, and likely for you too, to kind of shield your eyes and ears from suffering and despair around the world, or even right here in our own community. That's kind of our first world privilege. And I can turn off the news, I can go about my usual routine and not see it or be affected by it. However, in Romans 12:5, it reminds us that we are all one and we are in this together and we're responsible for one another. So we're called to help as we can, and we're called to give as we can. Over half the world lives on less than $2.50 a day, which is over 3 billion people. And yesterday, my daughter was watching a movie for school, and it's called Living on $1. And I encourage you all to watch that. I think Karna's going to link that in the chat maybe. But it's called Living on $1. And what it was about was 4 college-age guys went to Guatemala to live in Guatemala for a couple months. And they really kind of wanted to put themselves in the people's shoes and see what it was like to live on the equivalent of $1 a day. And some days no money, and some days $2. You just never know from day to day. And so what they did was they put numbers in a hat, numbers from 0 to 9, and they put those numbers in a hat. And each day they drew out of the hat to see how much money they would have for that day to live on. So, some days they're like, oh, no bananas today, or we're not gonna, who's gonna get to eat today, and they were really putting themselves in these people's shoes. At one point, one of the guys got sick. They had enough money to go to the doctor, but then didn't have enough money to get the basic medicine that he needed. Luckily, he had brought some from home, his privilege, right? That he had brought some from home. And then they realized types of food became extremely important and vital. They were so excited when they got lard, because a few spoonfuls is 1,800 calories, 300 grams of fat. They could give themselves some sustenance. But they were talking to people and interacting with people and realizing family after family and person after person was having to give up on their dream. One young woman they talked to had hopes of becoming a nurse one day, but she had to stop going to school in the 6th grade because her parents had to choose between feeding the family or sending their children to school. And on day 56, as you see in the slide, the guy, one of the college kids, wrote, "What can I do to help?" And that's why we're here today. We want to not forget the forgotten. As it says in Romans 12:13, we want to share with God's people who are in need. And we want to share this idea of alternative giving with you as a way that you can help and bring hope and livelihood and dignity to others around the world and right here in our state and in our community. And giving is so vital to humanity because giving is mentioned in the Bible 2,172 times. And to give you some frame of reference, love is mentioned 714 times. So obviously, giving is vital and crucial in this world. Karna, I think you're going to...
Yep. So, you all are just as aware as we are that the focus at this time of year is often on buying. We just zoomed through Black Friday, except for we didn't zoom through it. I think it's just going to be going on all month or something. So instead of this true giving, this idea of giving to those in need, we're really immersed in a little bit OCD around the idea of buying and buying traditional gifts and sometimes buying gifts that just don't mean much at all. So what is an alternative gift? This is really what we're talking about today. An alternative gift is a humanitarian support. These are gifts of peace and justice, gifts that are sustainable and that build security. These alternative gifts multiply and grow, sometimes exponentially, and offer hope and new life to people facing grave crisis and need. They challenge the trivia of our modern culture. These are authentic gifts that people really use and cherish. Also, these gifts always fit and are never thrown away. So a very distinct shopper attends an alternative gift market. These markets are held in the US and Canada in schools and churches and in service clubs. This market is known as a supermarket for the poor and the planet and is truly an international venue for fair trade. Unlike all capitalist markets in the world, it does not exist to make a profit, but rather it gives away 3 assets: joy to the donor or shopper, global awareness and education to the recipient. So in other words, it's a gift given in honor of someone, and then great benefit to people living in poverty or crisis, whether due to COVID or otherwise. The shoppers in this market are first world people of every age who enjoy every advantage of empowerment. They are the haves in the world of have-nots. They are you and I. Their compassion is generously expressed when they purchase simple gifts that change the world through direct giving at an alternative gift market. And I have to say, we have to thank Alternative Gifts International because they very much inspired us as an example. They really do a lot with alternative gift markets around the world, or around at least Canada and the US. And they've really made an impact on how Amy Narveson and I organize the fair that we've been running for the last 12 years in Northfield at Bethel Lutheran Church. Basically, AGI has learned that people like to give to specific places and to organizations that are reputable and have low overhead. They gave the idea of giving in honor of a friend or family member to us. They are an inspiring organization that identifies other hardworking, reliable charity organizations to support and makes giving manageable in smaller amounts as well as appealing to people. So this is how we have modeled our booklet after. And so I create this booklet every year. Amy and I sort of take on these different jobs, to make this thing happen every year for the 4 weeks of around Advent. And so these are just 2 examples, one under the category of health and medical, another under the category of environmental sustainability, saving lives with bicycles, where you can help through an organization in Colorado, take an old bike that they basically create anew by updating and sending to Namibia, Tanzania, or Zambia, to work as a vehicle for delivering medicine or getting kids to school. Or you could support a water project through Charity Water. And they're going to be coming to speak to us in this class a couple weeks from now. So those are just 2 examples of the 27 that we're offering this year and that we have carefully identified as perhaps important to the people of Bethel and certainly beyond. This is what's at the very end of the book that you can find on the Bethel website, or that you might actually have in your hand right now. It looks like this, and I just got mine in the mail on Friday. We sent them out to 500 Bethel members. Again, you can find all of this online as well through Bethel Lutheran Church in Northfield. And this shows you a project insert. So if you purchase, for instance, the gift of 10 chicks, which is the very first project in our booklet, you would receive an insert like this that Amy could send to you digitally, or you could pick up in the church entryway right now. They're right there, ready for you. There's also some complimentary gift cards. And so these are just a way to have something to give, because we are a culture that wants something to actually wrap and give to people. If you don't feel the need to have something, but just to tell or share what you've given in honor of a friend or a family member, that is absolutely awesome too. So one of the church's most powerful gifts is modeling the definition of giving. And this definition of giving is the Christ-like giving that I'm going to share with you right now. To become like Christ involves becoming a loving and giving person, having confidence, enabling you to be vulnerable, psychologically and physically. Jesus did both. Having the wisdom to see people's needs and the desire to meet them. I wanted to share really quick that if my kids learned one thing from me, one thing, their whole lives, if it was one thing, this is what I would want them to learn. When your needs are met, when you have your basic needs met, you turn outward and you help those in need. If that was the one takeaway, kids, are you listening? That would be it. This slide, it talks about compassion. Compassion literally means to suffer together. Among emotion researchers, it is defined as the feeling that arises when you are confronted with another's suffering and feel motivated to relieve that suffering. Compassion is not the same as empathy, though the concepts are related. While empathy refers more generally to our ability to take the perspective of and feel the emotions of another person, compassion is when those feelings and thoughts include the desire to help. So we're activated, right, when we feel compassion versus empathy. Amy.
So I think Karna and I, our compassion was activated 12 years ago. And we saw this video. And let me give you a little background. I mean, Christmas is a season focused on giving. And it seems that Christmas has been hijacked a bit and has turned into a season of buying, as Karna had mentioned earlier. And alternative giving fair is a way we're trying to kind of take back that true meaning of Christmas and follow Christ's message of helping the poor and lonely and the hurting. And we want to show you this video. It's from 2018. It's from an organization called Advent Conspiracy. And they are so-called conspiring to take back Christmas and are encouraging other people and churches to kind of get on board with this. And this video was kind of a catalyst for the birth of Bethel's Alternative Giving Fair. And I'm gonna let Karna just go ahead and play it.
Amy, you just said 2018. This is actually from 2008.
Sorry.
So it's actually quite old, but we still cry when we watch this. So here we go.
So when Karna and I watched that video 12 years ago, we were disturbed. We were emotional. We could relate to it. We were kind of falling into that trap of rushing around, missing the meaning of Christmas, trying to get all the perfect gifts for our family and our children, and we felt compelled to do something. And this video is from 12 years ago, so some of those statistics are outdated. So I'm going to update you on some of those statistics. The current statistics show that Americans spent $1 trillion on Christmas last year. They spent $1 trillion on Christmas in 2018, and they're projected to spend $1 trillion. We are, as Americans, projected to spend $1 trillion again this year on just Christmas. $150 billion of that $1 trillion went to online retailers. And here's an interesting connection. For that same amount, $150 billion, that's the cost to provide clean water worldwide. So when it comes to Christmas, Americans are the biggest spenders. 38 million people buy presents that they know receivers won't like. 56% of Americans received at least one gift that they didn't want. 142 million gifts are unwanted. 6% of people just throw them away, which is about 8.5 million people. And when asked, what do you enjoy about the holidays? 52% of people said spending time with family. with that same question, what do you enjoy about the holidays? Only 5% said getting gifts is their favorite thing of the holiday. So with those statistics, I just think we can do better. We can do good with our giving. We can give better. There's a way to put our spending or our giving to better use and to give it meaning and to make a real impact in the world and in someone's life. If everyone, that $150 billion that went to online retailers, we could solve the world water crisis worldwide. So it's kind of like repurposing our giving and knowing that over half the world lives on $2.50 a day. These statistics are kind of appalling, really. There's just so much waste. So, this video and these statistics that are shared and this message definitely had an impact on Karen and me 12 years ago, and it continues to. But it wasn't just that video that led us to begin Alternative Giving Fair. That was taking root long before we watched this video. And Karen is going to share some background on her story right now.
Okay, so I learned about life, death, sorry, I have to calm down for a second. Okay, I learned about life, death inadvertently from this guy, who is my brother. My brother, Tim. He lived his life with purpose, passion, and compassion. Before heading to Boston at the age of 23, he chose to volunteer to build a church in Central African Republic. While his girlfriend was visiting and they were traveling by car near a game preserve about 6 months into his project, they were ambushed by armed bandits who chose to shoot at their vehicle to get it to stop so they could take their goods they had in their car. My brother was fatally wounded and died that day at the age of 24, a super capable human who meant the world to me and to my parents. You learn a lot and very quickly about what matters in life when you lose a loved one. As many of you know, with the pandemic happening, we can assume that like 1.5 million more people, more families are grieving right now. My parents are my number one inspiration. They are resilient. They are beautiful models for how to turn grief into hope. Grounded in their faith in God, they knew that sorrow and joy go hand in hand. And they began to build relationships with those who grew to love Tim and those who grew to love and those that he grew to love during his 6 months in Africa. My parents built relationships during this time when they needed comfort and while experiencing loss. Compassion was modeled by many, but especially those who loved him and were like family and were grieving him too in Central African Republic. My parents needed to use this energy for good and began an organization called Lutheran Partners in Global Ministry that would use their aptitudes and strengths to fill a void in the world. So my career-long public school teacher and school nurse parents became fundraisers, liaisons, and Pied Pipers for a number of needy populations. Continuing to look out for the needs in CAR, building a women's center, a hospital, creating a village savings loan program, working in Argentina and Tanzania, and taking on the role of school support and student sponsorship in the incredible country of India, where they have dedicated so much of their time that they invited my big family of 7 to spend their 50th anniversary in these inspiring places, full of need and full of pure joy. Along with an amazing adventure visiting Tim's church and his dear friends in CAR in 1991, Bob and I were super fortunate to be able to do that. In 2015, my whole family got to have this very eye-opening experience meeting very generous and giving people in Tamil Nadu, India. We were able to share in teaching English, reading, which by the parents of these young, amazing kids is the very most important learning for Dalit children. These families that send their kids to these schools sponsored by LPGM are the lowest caste in the system in India. They are considered throwaways. No. Each state in India speaks a different language. So English is now considered the country's language, and learning English provides potential for young people to move out of poverty. Parents deeply value the possibility of getting out of this $1 a day poverty. And so these schools are filling kids with knowledge and hope for a better tomorrow. With this firsthand experience, my family deepened our understanding and broke down those barriers that divide in order to grow compassion in ourselves. Another gift that keeps giving. This started because my parents are compassionate people. They were raised by compassionate people, and then I was raised by compassionate people. And it's almost like a good disease, right, that spreads. And we want to continue to spread it. So this is called the pandemic of compassion. I'm going to show you a video right now, just like a 30-second video to just share with you just some sights and sounds for a second. Hopefully.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Matthew.
All right.
Thank
I think
you.
we're going to head out, everybody. So good job.
Okay, so just to get a little taste, sometimes it's helpful just to see and hear a little bit. It just gives you a little feel for what it's really like in these places, right? Those of you who have traveled abroad know how important it is to like get into the shoes of people and start to understand a little bit. So both of these can everybody still hear me? Can everybody still hear me? I'm not.
We can still hear you.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. I'm paranoid because I taught a class the other day, and the last 5 minutes I literally talked to myself because I had lost everybody and I didn't even know it. So I'm mildly paranoid. Okay, so I'm just going to finish this bit of sharing and hand it off to Amy. Both experiences abroad to third world countries for me left me feeling actually. Even though it was an amazing experience, I actually felt pretty pathetic as an American. I knew my life was too cluttered, figuratively and literally. I have been so humbled and profoundly moved by the generosity of those living in poverty, and I absolutely had to get myself activated. One more thing I just want to share that just has to be shared, and that is my brother was a writer. This has comforted us so much to have his writing to read over the years, not only because he is no longer with us, but because his thinking was so mature and profound and almost prophetic in some ways. Just 2 years before he died, my grandmother actually passed away, my dad's mom, Grandma Alice, and he wrote something he titled Reflections on Death. So again, 2 years before he died, he wrote this, and this strengthens me. This, what you see on your screen right now, thus from the dead earth rises the green shoot, is written on my brother's gravestone. So I'm just going to read this really quick. How true it is that to a survivor of a deceased, the fact of death is far less important than one's dealing with that fact. Death tests our emotional stability to its limits. The fact of death brings with it the power to destroy a human being. Yet, death is also opportunity, a chance to learn, grow, and appreciate its antithesis, life. Ironically, death teaches us about life, what it means to be alive and be surrounded by caring others. Death forces us to re-examine our values in the light of its immediacy. Thus, from the dead earth rises the green shoot. Written by my brother 2 years before he died. I'm going to leave it there, Amy.
All right. Children are always watching, and children learn from what's modeled for them. I know this as a parent and as a teacher, and because I was a child myself a long time ago. And I grew up in a small town in southeastern Minnesota, and my parents were very active in the church. We went to church every single Sunday, and if anything was going on at church, my family was there because my parents were involved in it. And when I was 7 years old, My parents were active in a group in our church that sponsored a refugee Hmong family to come to our town and live in our town and sponsor them. So I was there alongside my parents, cleaning the house for this Hmong family, furnishing the house, finding clothes for the family, and eventually receiving the family the day they arrived. And I would stop by their home regularly with my parents, dropping off essentials or just checking in with this family. I was witness to dedicated, constant giving and helping those in need at a young age. And also growing up, I watched my parents and my aunts and uncles give money to girls in Africa every Christmas instead of exchanging gifts with one another. And that was my first introduction to the idea of alternative giving. Then fast forward 13 years later, at the age of 20, I was fortunate to travel around the world for 5 months with our beloved Matt Gimsey on global semester at St. Olaf. And I spent most of that time living in third world countries. And that's where I was faced with poverty and sickness. Here's pictures of me walking through a rural village in India. And it was right there in front of me. But I lived in these countries and kind of became immersed in the culture, and I formed connections and built relationships with people. And I'm reminded of that Bible verse, we who are many form one body. And I was connecting with these people, and they were no longer just a statistic that I read about or in a picture. So compassion was stirring inside me there. Here, this is a picture from South Africa. And this one boy was just saying peace in our land. That was in January of 94, right before the first open free elections. So there was a lot of excitement at that time, but a lot of turmoil at that time. And then 7 years later, I want to show you this picture right here on the right. This was in Langa, a township in South Africa. And that room housed 3 families, 1 family per bed. So there were 3 beds in that room and 3 families living in it. So, and then 7 years later, my husband and Bryce and I went on LPGM's first mission trip to India in August of 99. I loved the 6 weeks that I spent on Global in India, and I was excited to return and share that with Bryce. And I had always said to him, you go to India to experience the people. They are truly some of the most generous people I've ever met in my life. And I want to share an example with you. It was here in India that I learned the true meaning of giving. We sponsored a boy in India, and we went to his school and we helped build a playground at that school, and we got to spend time with our sponsor child. And there he is right there, Jayaprakash. And one day, Yenna, who ran the school, the girls' school, had set up a day trip for Bryce and me and our boy to go to his home village and maybe see his family. And then also another couple from our trip, Steve and Naomi, they traveled with us with their boy because the villages were near each other. And so we went to our boy's village and we walked around. We found his home, and it kind of looked abandoned. Nobody was there. His father had passed away, so we were hoping maybe his mother was there, but we didn't see her. And so we kind of walked around his village and just here's some of the sights. And then we moved on to go on and see Steve and Naomi's family, their boys' home. And so we're in the car and we drive up, and it's like it was yesterday. This woman comes running out from this mud hut, huge, bright white tooth smile, and is wearing this sari that has every color of the rainbow. And it just was so vibrant because the backdrop was just dry earth and a mud hut and just brown. And here's this like rainbow in front of us, this woman running out. And she invites us into her 1-room home. And so there's 5 adults and these 2 boys. There's 7 of us, and they find folding chairs from I don't know where, and they bring out folding chairs, and we're sitting here on this dirt floor in these chairs. And then she brings us each a Coca-Cola with a straw in it. And Yenna, you can see Yenna in the picture, that's her leaning over. She's just shaking her head. And she said, "It's too much. It's too much." And the cost of those Coca-Colas was a whole week's wage. This woman gave up a whole week's wage to give us Coca-Cola and welcome us into her home. And not only that, we also learned that she had lost her husband. He had died. So she did construction, which a lot of women do in India. That was her job. And her construction job was a couple hours away. And she knew we were coming. She didn't know exactly when we were coming. So she stayed home for an entire week so she wouldn't miss us, so she could express her gratitude. And so here she's given us a week's wage in Coca-Cola. She gave up a week's wage to be able to greet us in person. And not only that, as we were leaving, she gave Naomi and Steve these two beautiful brass oil lamp things with her son's initials engraved on the bottom. So this woman just helped me gain a truer perspective on life and deepening of my faith. And it was found in the smile and gratitude of this poor, beautiful, hardworking woman, in a tiny mud hut in the middle of India. And we can give and be generous, and we can often do that without sacrifice. But that woman that day gave more than I have ever given because of that sacrifice she made. And that is where I really learned that we all have the capacity to give. And we all have the capacity to give more than we think we can. Because when we drove up to her home, you would think this woman has nothing to give. And as I said, she gave more than I think I ever have. So and there's our boy in front of his home right there. So sorry, that's still an emotional, 21 years later, that's just still an emotional story for me. It's very impactful. And that's, I think, where all these experiences that I've had in my life, from the modeling that I received from my parents to my travels to those experiences have just stirred all that compassion in me to act and in any way I can. And then the Alternative Giving Fair has kind of been birthed from those experiences.
Okay, and so Amy, I don't know how to follow that, but thank you so much for sharing that story. So just to give you some more details about the Alternative Giving Fair, you can see that these are the projects that we are focused on this year. We have more than we have before, as far as being focused on a number of different organizations that are doing amazing work in the world. The steps that you would take would be to read through the booklet. I created that, but I created it from a number of different organizations that have lots of great information to share, but we tried to make it concise and easy to read and easy to follow and easy to be able to respond to. You can prayerfully consider services that you would like to support in an alternative way of giving during the holidays, and consider who you might want to give in honor of. We stocking stuff some in our kids' stockings as well. And then you can make your selections and fill out your shopping list form, and then add up your selections, write in the total on the shopping list form, and send that shopping list and a check for the total amount written to Bethel Lutheran Church. The reason we write it to Bethel Lutheran Church is because it's easy for you. So basically, Bethel, we will make sure that the funds get to the correct services that are requested by you, so that you're giving and you can be guaranteed of that. This is what the form looks like. So Amy creates this every year, and we sent this out, but this is also out. You can help with that and go ahead and print it. And this is the actual booklet. So I'm not going to walk through this whole thing, but I am going to just show you what it looks like, so that you can also find it and take a look on your own time. But you can just kind of see it's loading. Sorry about that. It's loading, but basically we have 27 different projects this year that we're encouraging you to consider and to think deeply about. These are some of them here. So there are some from the ELCA Good Gifts that some of you might be familiar with, where you're giving the gift of an animal to a family in need. We have many projects from LPGM, my parents' organization, as well as AGI, Alternative Gifts International. So we offer a sponsoring of a child, which is always something you should consider. It's only $360, and it educates a child from the Dalit caste in India. It gives them literally everything they need to survive for a year. And it's an incredible opportunity to build a relationship as well. We're doing a cool thing with the Memory Project, which is actually something even my high school students are participating in. They're creating portraits for kids in Afghanistan this year. So you could contribute to that program. You could contribute to this Honduras program. We have a couple people here. Darlene and Jean are with us today. They're members of Bethel, and their son has started a school. It's called Blessings to the Nations School, and they have a number of needs, including morning snacks, as well as $75 donation for a number of different construction projects going on right now: new windows, roof repair, solar panels, batteries for solar panels, and they are working through YWAM. So please consider giving to Scott and Elga Broughton, working in Honduras right now. There are so many different projects, and they're just incredibly wonderful to read about. And I just really encourage you to take a look. Most important, I think, is to also think about what's happening for social justice in our world right now. We are certainly all looking for ways to help and to be allies in the world right now, not only for people around the world and across the world, but people right here in our backyards and in Minnesota. And I am soon going to introduce an amazing woman named Catherine Lozada, who has influenced me and inspired me so very much in the last few months, because I've decided what I've been inspired from this experience and this growing of my compassion to start to be more active as a citizen in our democracy. So I was doing all kinds of voter bank calling, working with Faith in Minnesota this fall before the election. And there are some amazing groups and coalitions that are partnering with Isaiah that she will talk about, 3 of which are in our booklet. The Immigration and Latinx Coalition, the Black Church Collective. We're encouraging you to donate any amount to these amazing groups in Minnesota. And then the Muslim Coalition is amazing as well. So we definitely have environmental sustainability projects as well. One that's through Charity Water. Again, don't miss 2 weeks from now when Charity Water is going to come and talk to us about what they're doing in the world.
We also have books coming from the founder of Charity Water. Scott Harrison wrote a book called Thirst, and we've got some copies coming our way. So if anyone's interested in reading that prior to the class, we will have some information probably up on our page there, Alternative Giving page on the website, on how you can get a hold of that book.
And lastly, just to remind you, if you do want to actually physically give a gift and have the project description inside, we have little, we can give you that information so that you can give a gift and be able to kind of explain it to someone. These are some of the cards that we're offering that are in the entryway at Bethel that you can literally go help yourself to. We ask you for every project that you purchase, you can take a card per project. And again, you can contact Amy Narveson, amynarveson@live.com in order to get project inserts as well.
The inserts are in the vestibule also. So you can just, they're filed on the table there. So you can get a card and an insert, or you can get a digital copy if you want. So.
Okay, and I'm going to stop screen sharing in a second, but I wanted to end with this. I am going to probably watch this tonight. I didn't realize that there was an amazing John Lewis documentary that is now out, but I just love this quote: "Never be afraid to make some noise and to get in good trouble, necessary trouble." It's so important that we get out of our comfort zones. It's so important that we get, what I've been saying lately, comfortable with discomfort. We live in comfort 99% of our lifetimes. as first world people. And I just really want to encourage you to realize that it's okay to get comfortable with discomfort. At this time, I would like to pass this on to Catherine Lozada so she can talk about faith in Minnesota, or specifically Isaiah. I'm going to stop sharing. And I just thank you all for coming. Catherine's going to share 5 minutes or 10 minutes of, so we are going over a little bit, but she's going to share a little bit with us to talk more about these groups that you can support right here in Minnesota when it comes to helping people feel dignity and creating more of a just world. So thanks for being with us, Catherine.
Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Catherine Lozada, Southern Minnesota organizer with Isaiah and our sister organization, Faith in Minnesota, as Karna named as well. And it's just so good to be with you all. And I see a lot of familiar faces. So great to see you all this Sunday morning. Yes, thanks for the wave, Dottie. I love it. So many of you have been involved with us and or our sister organization, Faith in Minnesota as well. But I'll do a quick kind of intro to Isaiah, as well as the coalitions that are named in this Alternative Giving Fair booklet. And thank you all for the consideration, the discernment to give of yourselves, of your time, and of what you are able this year, as well as it's been a hard year for many people. And as it's exacerbated a lot of the iniquities that we've seen all the way along in our world and in our state of Minnesota and in our own communities. And what we can do is figure out how we are one body, how we're in this together, and how we lift up one another, right? So Isaiah is named for, from the verse Isaiah 58:12, that we're called to be the repairers of the breach, the restorer of the streets to dwell in. So both Isaiah and Faith in Minnesota, both organizations are a political home for people of faith and shared values who are acting boldly and prophetically for racial, economic, and climate justice in Minnesota. Thinking about politics as not a partisan thing, right? But it's how do we live out our values? That can come for many of us from our faith tradition or from a place of shared values, right? How do we shape the decisions that are being made? How are we part of the decisions that are being made as well? Or whose voices are being intentionally excluded or left out? So we want to make sure that we're creating this new people-centered politics in our state, one rooted in abundance, where everyone is in and no one is out. And our headlines that we're constantly working towards in our agenda, our faith agenda that we call it, are a democracy that honors every person's dignity and a caring economy where we can all thrive. So Isaiah is the nonpartisan 501c3, if you care about tax statuses, that can advocate for issues and organize faith institutions, right? And Faith in Minnesota is the 501c4 that can shape elections. So there's different tools in the toolbox towards the same agenda and vision. It's constantly this call to live out core values and build a multiracial, multi-faith beloved community where we see so often, you probably experienced this, especially this year, this most important election year, some politicians and community leaders trying to pit us against one another based on race, faith tradition, geography, an issue, so that they can concentrate more wealth and power in fewer and fewer hands. This whole presentation, right, from Karna and Amy has laid out how we have more than enough resources in our world. We have an unjust distribution system that leaves so many people behind. And we want to make sure that we're not just doing charity, but justice, that we're actually investing in people, examining and shaping our system so that everyone can thrive and have the opportunity to live fully into who God is calling you to be, based on, regardless of your religion or race or gender, where you're from, etc. Creating beloved community here on earth, right? Constantly striving to do that. And that's what my home church, a very social justice-y Presbyterian church, instilled those kind of values in me as well. That constant invitation to live out loving God and loving your neighbors in everything that you do. And that's in our relationships, in our communities, and in our systems as well. So what initially drew me to Isaiah was a friend invited me to one of the leadership assemblies where I was so struck by a multiracial room with people from so many different kinds of life experiences in a room together, trying to figure it out. How do we create this beloved community here? We have so many different ways, or so many forces, so many systems that have shaped us along the way. But if we can agree, we're called to create this multiracial, multi-faith, beloved community together, we can figure it out. And it's hard. It takes lots of listening and intentional conversations and deciding to invest in that, right? So that was back in 2015 when I initially was invited to get involved, and I've been now on staff for 3.5 years. And our organization has expanded significantly in the last few years, from over 100 mainly Christian congregations like Bethel to include the Black Barbershop and Congregation Cooperative, the Muslim Coalition, the Latino Coalition, Kids Count on Us, that organizes independent childcare centers across the state, the newly formed Youth Coalition, and more communities in Greater Minnesota. So what strikes me so much too about these coalitions, like in the booklet, the Muslim Coalition, the Black Barbershops and Congregation Cooperative, that has like grown out of the BCC, that is now BBCC, as well as the Latino Coalition, is that they're organizing their own communities, especially those who have been traditionally oppressed or excluded from our systems and told their voices or their lives don't matter. They're more easily able to build trust and understanding, meet their people where they're at, really hear what is impacting us and our loved ones. What are we concerned about and hopeful for? What can we build together? And then come together across Isaiah and build these bridges and solidarity and shared visions and values. So of course, you can read a little bit more about what each coalition does in the booklet. There's a good description in there. Thank you, Karna, and thank you, Amy. Just to name some statistics of what these coalitions have been doing to shape this election as well, across Isaiah and our sister organization, Faith in Minnesota, thinking about shaping this election as a vehicle to make our agenda possible. It's more about us, what our people need to thrive, than any one particular party or candidate. That's what politics should be about. So we had over 1 million contact attempts to voters all across the state, and over 114,000 conversations across race and faith tradition and geography. And it started with so many intentional conversations, hard conversations. Many of you did that hard work too, with people we know and love already, and then neighbors we needed to build relationships with and understand what matters to them and their loved ones. Dispel the politics of fear and division. And especially in a pandemic election year, we had to get really creative. So the Black Barbershop and Congregation Cooperative built the largest Black voter program in the state. They called and texted every Black voter in Minnesota over 2 times. Same with the Latino Coalition. They partnered with Unidos, one of our partner organizations, and called and texted every Latino voter in Minnesota over 2 times. And the Muslim Coalition did a whole lot of that. They built neighborhood teams and caravans to bring people to the polls, masks on, even in a pandemic. And they registered over 350 new voters in southern Minnesota alone, which I think is just amazing. So the innovation is just incredible when we unleash people's spirits and their voices. Like, that's what this should be about, right? Inviting people, giving them space, hearing them out, building relationships, and building people power, not so we can have power over, but the ability to bring about an agenda so that we can all thrive in Minnesota. So now that we're through the election, people are taking a deep breath, and we're going back to our communities to really listen to what we need to go do and build now together. We know that the pandemic has exposed and exacerbated, again, many iniquities in our communities and state that have existed for a long time. And to be able to care for our loved ones, regardless of what we look like or where we come from, we need to be investing in one another, and things like healthcare, paid family leave, childcare, worker protections, broadband internet, renewable energy, right? Things that are coming more to the surface as well, especially in these coalitions that are having conversations with their people and bringing them to the forefront across Isaiah, just like we are too in southern Minnesota. Affordable, dignified housing, ending Islamophobia, building youth centers, restoring driver's licenses for immigrants that we've been trying to do for 15 plus years. But also, what does a more comprehensive immigrants' Bill of Rights look like in Minnesota? Reimagining community safety, so we all feel safe in our communities, no matter the color of our skin. Expanding voting rights to make sure everyone's voice is heard and counted. So again, this is really the season to go back to listening and learning to what our communities need and building the people power and strategy to make it possible. So as you are in your discernment in how you give, when you give to these coalitions in Isaiah, you're really investing in people-centered community building, in deep listening, and constantly inviting people to shed the narratives and systems that keep them down, and instead invite them to lead and create beloved community together here on earth, here in Minnesota. So I thank you for that consideration. I thank you for your time here as well. If you would like to join us and get involved to a next great moment that we usually do after every election every 2 years is come together across the state, across race, and across all of these coalitions, across the full one body of our organization. And it's usually a few thousand people in our organization, knowing that we're in it together, seeing each other, committing to ourselves and each other, how we want to lead in the next 2 years on our agenda together. So this year, that will be January 24th. It's a Sunday, and I will put the registration link here in the chat for you. Invite you to join us. And this year, it's even easier for us in Greater Minnesota because it's all on Zoom. It's Sunday, January 24th from 2 to 5 p.m., which will come together. We'll even have some moments of interaction with key leaders such as our governor and other legislative leaders, a conversation about how we can partner with them on our agenda. And then we will also be launching a week of action. So there'll be some Zooms in the week after January 24th, rooted in what we're hearing our communities need now. So stay tuned. We're having those conversations and shaping that week of formation and action, and really invite you to join us if you are so moved on January 24th. So that's what I've got for you here today. Happy to stay on later, or I'll put my email in the chat too as well if you have further follow-up questions. But thank you all so much for your time and for your consideration and giving.
Thank you, Catherine, so very much for being here with us today. And we obviously have gone over time. We kind of don't care, sorry. And we're going to hand this off to our very—
Can I say one thing?
Yes, of course.
Before we're gonna let Mac wrap up, but I just want to send you with, as you go off into this Christmas season and planning out your giving and spending and whatnot, and as we're all going to be contributing to the $1 trillion that we spend on Christmas, I want to leave you with 2 Corinthians 9:11. You will be made rich in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion. So just think and prayerfully consider how you're going to give this year. And now, if you want to introduce Mac, Karna.
Mac, would you join us for a little bit of ending inspiration?
He's muted. There we go.
Oh, good. Well, Karna, Amy, and Catherine, this was just a wonderful, wonderful presentation. Inspirational, tearful, inspiring. There's everything that had to happen today. It felt so good in your hands. And so there's not really a lot that I can say to wrap this up, but a few points. One, I knew Tim. He was in my history of architecture class, and he won every honor a student could win, and he was on his way to Harvard Architectural when he went off to do his project. And Karna I knew, although I don't think we had any courses together, but you were just such wonderful people. And then, and I have to say, Amy, together on that global experience, it was, my privilege of knowing young people like you and that whole group. It's just a thrill. I look back and really I get teared up because of your goodness, and what you are doing now is such an inspiration. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I want to say that 50 years ago, Jackie and I found this old church that had been empty. It was built in 1882 and had been empty for 10 years. It was about to be torn down. The community said it was in the way. There's a street that cuts off part of it. And we contacted the church, and they needed $4,000 to get out of debt. They ran a hose from the parsonage for water on Sundays. And with our two really young children, we moved in, and I didn't know how to pound a 2x4 into place, but we just had a great time saying, oh, good, it's a church house now, and we have loved living here. I wish you could be here with me. And believe me, I'm not suffering from the cold here. Nobody ever gets out in this space, so that's why I want to be here today. So thanks for joining me on that. I have, and I just hunt every week. You've inspired me with this whole program so much. The treasures, by the way, are everything that I see. Every person I see on this screen, I'm thinking of what a treasure for, and I know almost all of you from personal experience. We joined Bethel in 1972, so we're kind of old timers. But I found a long poem by a priest named Richard Hedrick, but I want to just end with the last part of it because it really feels like he caught what is going on. It's from this year, and it's a reflection on where he says or thinks and feels we are. And I love compassion to suffer with, from the Latin cum patior, and it literally means standing with those who are in need. And boy, you have demonstrated that so beautifully today. Today, breathe. Listen. Behind the noises of contagion, the birds are singing each morning. The sky does clear. If we truly look forward, spring will come again while we encompass those in need of love. Open the windows of your soul, and though you may not be able to touch others across the empty square, sing, speak kindness, and listen, and act in every way you can by giving all the love you can. Amen. God bless.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Mac, for sharing that.
It's beautiful. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for joining us. We are so appreciative of your presence with us and your willingness to stay with us for this longer session. We decided we didn't care when we knew it was going to go long, and thank you for being with us this morning. It means a whole lot to us to share this story. Amy and I are so glad to be doing this work, and we're so happy to share in it with anyone who feels so inspired. So please send us your questions, send us your needs. We're so happy to get anyone more involved and activated and continuing to build your life of compassion as well. So thanks again.
If you have any questions right now, you can stay on and ask us any questions that you have, maybe about the alternative giving. So we're happy to stay on.
And I also want to release you if you feel you need to leave. So feel free to leave, but if you want to stay, we'll stay on as well until about 11 o'clock. So thanks again.
Thank you,
I have
everybody.
a question.
Sure.
Do you stay in touch with the children you sponsored?
Talking to Amy, I think.
I'm not sure which of you now had the boy that, yes, Amy, I guess it was. Do you stay in touch with that young man?
He left the school a long time ago, and we lost track of him, and so we became out of touch. So we've sponsored several kids since then, but I don't know his whereabouts anymore. Once he left the school, we kind of lost contact right away, as did LPGM. It kind of, that contact was broken somehow. So
and that's actually not unusual. It's partly a way to protect those who are willing to give. That your personal information isn't given out to the families.
Sure.
So that your relationship is through the organization of LPGM, and your private information is protected. People have chosen to stay connected and find ways to do that, but that's a choice that the giver would have to make in that situation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of typical for a sponsorship program. Are there other questions? or comments? Anything else that you'd like to share? Well,
Karna, maybe you can just reiterate what next week will bring.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Dan Ruth will be with us next week from Lutheran Partners of Global Ministry. He's the executive director. So my parents were the founders of that organization, but he will be coming to share more specifically about what they're doing in the world right now for good, and how they're building relationships. Super excited to have him talk. He'll share a little bit about the beginnings of the organization. So you'll hear a little bit about my family or Tim's story a bit, and then what my parents have done to build connection. And then the week after that, we're going to have Paige Nagel here, as we mentioned, from New York City. Scott Harrelson created this organization called Charity Water. 1 out of 10 people in the world does not have healthy drinking water. And so he has quite a story, and the link is in the chat, along with many other links in the chat. If you want to click on any of those, they'll basically, you'll then have those links.
I think we came across Charity Water a couple of years ago, learned about it, and 100% of donations go to building wells. All their overhead is paid by like corporations that are willing to pay that. So any money you give to Charity Water 100% of it goes to creating wells around the world. And my family has given money for a well. Paige Nagel from New York came and had lunch at our home with us as a way of saying thank you and to just talk to us about the project. And so she's going to be tuning in 2 weeks from now from New York and kind of talking more about Charity Water. Scott Harrison, as Karen said, was the founder. And he was hoping to join, but was unable to. So, and like I said, there's a book that he has written called Thirst that we've got copies coming our way. So if people want to get a hold of that, maybe before 2 weeks from now, if you want to read that, we'll have some information we'll put up on the website that you'll be able to find out information. So on how to get a hold of that. But it's a great organization. They're doing a lot of good. And one thing with their wells, if you give money towards a well, they keep you updated on it. You can track it. They've even put cameras up. You can see the actual well and see how it's functioning. But then they put local people there in charge of it. So they're, the communities that are getting these wells are the ones maintaining it and running it. So, and being trained in how to do that. So it's great. So we're excited to hear from her in 2 weeks.
So come back and join us. We'd love to have you. Tell your friends. Any other questions? Well, thank you again for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure to have you here, and we wish for you a wonderful day and a wonderful season of giving.